Hello, year 12. I thought it would be a good idea to take a look at someone else's essay from last year so we can analyze it since our assessment task is coming up very, very soon. This is Chris's essay from last year, and the question was, how has Strictly Ballroom and a text of your own choosing used features to communicate Australian visions? So Chris has written an essay to talk about certain features to communicate the topic of Australian visions. He has used several elements that Baz Luhrmann and the other composer use to communicate the concept of Australian visions. So I came up with a way to show you how he constructed this essay by just splitting up the sentences and explaining them. So the first part is obviously the introduction, and he has introduced his essay using a broad statement. It says Australian visions can refer to the way Australians think, the way they live, physical landmarks, or typical Australian animals like koalas. It is a traditional distinctive quality that Australian culture has in nature. Obviously this is very, very broad and very general, so he needs to, after that, he needs to go down to the prescribed text and the related text. So the next sentence, which is a reference to text, says the film Strictly Ballroom, directed by Baz Luhrmann, and the cover of the book Down Under, designed by David Cook, communicate a variety of Australian visions through the uses of different film techniques and visual communications effectively. So he has used, we're going to use a different highlighter, obviously Strictly Ballroom, and he has also used the cover of the book Down Under, which we have already analyzed. You might recall that. And he has said that they communicate a variety of Australian visions. So he's going to talk about many things within the concept of Australian visions, and he also specifies that he's going to talk about film techniques and visual techniques. I think he probably missed there that it's called visual techniques. Okay, now the thesis statement, which is the statement that is his own line of argument that he's going to follow, says the visions presented in Strictly Ballroom are Australians' competitiveness and the multiculturalism that is rising and changing the surrounding culture, and the book cover displays the contrast between the danger of Australian wild nature and Australian playful and lively culture. The texts are different, but they demonstrate Australians' own uniquely diverse landforms as well as people and experiences. So he's talking about, I have already highlighted, Australian competitiveness and multiculturalism for Strictly Ballroom. And regarding the book cover, he's talking about the danger of Australian wild culture and the Australians' playful and lively culture. So those are two lines of arguments for his book cover and two lines of arguments for Strictly Ballroom. Okay, so now that we have read that, we should expect him to discuss those different lines of argument. Now for the paragraph, I have simply analyzed them using the S.E.X.Y paragraph structure, which means S stands for topic sentence, E stands for evidence, X stands for example, and Y stands for why this is important. Because you always have to include the importance of what you are talking about, otherwise it sounds a bit silly. Okay, so for paragraph 1, which is the prescribed text, that's strictly ballroom, he starts it with this topic sentence. The vision of the competitive nature of Australian society is shown through strictly ballroom. Lorma's film describes the story of a young ballroom dancer, Scott, who does not dance to the rules set by the Australian Dance Federation but improvises his own flashy, crowd-pleasing steps to freely express his passion towards dancing. That's his whole topic sentence. It's very long, by the way. But he says that he's going to talk about, obviously, the competitive nature of Australian society. And then he talks a little bit about what is the conflict in the film. So that is that Scott is showing these flashy, crowd-pleasing steps to express his passion, and he does not dance to the rules set by the Australian Federation. So that is his line of argument for his first paragraph. Now, what is the evidence of this? Now he needs to talk about things that happen in the movie that shows this. So in this case, he talks about Scott's mother, Shirley Hastings. She controlled the Hastings family. She becomes overly emotional when others do not meet her expectation. She does not seem to enjoy dancing much, but rather she places more focus on the competitive side of dancing. Now, example number one, he's actually pulling a scene and he's talking about, it says, this is shown when Shirley tries to convince Scott not to dance his own step but dance to the rules so that he can win the Pan Pacific's Grand Prix. Stick with your goals and they eventually bring their own rewards. Shirley says this to Scott. A close shot is used to show her desperation and disappointment through her facial expression. So his example is just one quote from the film, and it's also a camera shot that is a close shot in that case. Okay. Now, why is this important? To her, achieving a goal is more important than enjoying it. So this is not really effective, this sentence, but that's what's supposed to mean that for Shirley, it's obviously more important to just win the competition. This does refer to the competitive nature of Australian society. So in that sense, it is not too bad. Evidence 2. So what's the other piece of evidence he discussed? It says, furthermore, the Dancing Federation values rules over creativity. Now, what is the example for that statement that he just made? So he pulls another scene from the movie. It says, when the final dance competition is about to begin, the combination of a low-angle shot, so he's talking about shots again, of the three judges and the trophies at the foreground, implies that this is not about enjoying the dance, but rather strictly judging the dancers winning the trophies, focusing on the competitive side of dancing. Why is this important? Through this, it can be seen that Australia's competitive nature is one of the most significant elements of Australian visions. Well, I wouldn't say the most significant elements, because he'll be talking about multiculturalism as well. But I would say this is one of the elements of Australian visions. Okay, the competitive side of, Australia's competitive nature, was actually mentioned just before. Okay, so we can see that he has used a number of lines of argument, which is the evidence 1 and evidence 2, and he also uses some examples straight from the movie, some scenes, some camera shots, etc. And he explains why this is important. So all those elements are very important for all your paragraphs. Now, paragraph 2, prescribed text. So we got another paragraph. It says, Topic sentence. In addition, the new emerging multiculturalism in Australia that is partially and noticeably affecting the traditional Australian culture shown throughout the film is equally significant. So he's talking about multiculturalism now. Might change the color. Okay. So he's saying that that's a significant element of Australian visions. Now, what's the evidence for that? Scott happens to dance with Fran, a Spanish-Australian woman, after he loses his original partner because of his improvisation during the first dance competition in the film. As they dance together, Scott gets to meet Fran's Spanish family, and the Spanish dance Paso Doble from Fran's family introduces a new world of dancing to Scott. So he's talking about a new world of dancing. So this motivates him to master the Paso Doble and perform it in the Pan Pacifics. This attracts great attention from the crowd and has a shocking impact on the traditional ballroom dance world. Okay, so that's a bit of a long piece of evidence, but he's relating that to multiculturalism, how Scott's experience of Fran's family actually has added some value to his own dancing. Now, the example is the director Baz Luhrmann uses various techniques to emphasize this. So he's going to talk about various things. I don't think that's the right color, but anyway. When Scott first meets the Spanish family, a low-angle shot with Fran's father in the middle of the frame and the traditional Spanish costume that he's wearing gives us a totally different sense of culture from the traditional Australian one. So he's talking about low-angle shot, camera shots. Also, when Scott and Fran dance at the Pan Pacific at the end, long shots and tracking shots are put together in a montage to distinctively show how Scott and Fran's dance step are different from other ballroom dancers. So he's talking a lot about the concept that how multiculturalism is different from the mainstream Australian culture. Why is this important? This implies that the Spanish Paso Doble stands out well from the Australian dance competition and excites the crowd, who are entertained greatly. All these show that this multiculturalism, I would say that multiculturalism, not this, provides opportunities to learn new things from other cultures or other cultures, and that it is changing the traditional Australian cultures and is enriching society. So that's how he relates what happens in the film with the idea of multiculturalism in Australia. This changing vision of Australia is another great component of Australian visions. So he is reiterating what he actually said beforehand in his thesis statement. Sorry, here in his topic sentence. Okay. Now, paragraph 3. So the last paragraph, he actually talks about the related text, and that was the book cover. Topic sentence. The book Down Under is a travel book about Australia. The cover of the book merges a variety of aspects of Australian visions through various visual techniques. So it's talking again about a variety of things, and that the book in the cover uses visual techniques. There is some evidence missing there, so I didn't count that as evidence, but he didn't actually come up with a way of explaining this, but he went straight to the example. In the background of the cover, a salient image of a yellow road sign is placed at the middle, which will be in the middle, and the vector lines of the sign draws viewers' sight to Uluru, an iconic Australian natural landmark. Australia is famous for its enormous natural environment, and the road sign and Uluru in the cover. So he's talking about visual elements in the book cover that relate to Australia. Why is this important? Indicate, by the way, this was linked. these two sentences were linked.